This is the fourth, or the how to experience the joy. Well, it's more than joy, the ecstasy, the incredible, unbelievable sense of freedom, the wonder when we escape the clutches of fear. It is fear that has ruled our world. It is love that should rule it, that fear has taken over. Peanuts, and Lucy is in the swinging. Lucy thinks a lot of Lucy. You've noticed that. And Charlie Brown is pushing her, and she's going up on the high side. And she said, I decided not to go to summer camp this year. And Charlie Brown said, that must have been a hard decision for you to make. She said, yes, it was. It took 3 seconds. Now, Lucy has a hard time at summer camp. Do you remember how summer camp has always been for her? Spiders and frogs and creepy and crawly things. And so she said that she doesn't like summer camp. What she means is that she's afraid of it. She's not in control when she's in summer camp. And so fear made its decision in 3 seconds. Are you aware of how many decisions that fear has made in your life and how instantaneous? 3 seconds is a long time when fear is making up its mind. Fear's mind is already made up, and fear says you're not going to do it if you haven't already done it. Fear keeps you in your comfort zone, in the box, in the crib, whatever size your present crib happens to be. Fear will keep you there. Well, fear rarely says yes. As I was putting my notes together this morning, I reached into my briefcase, and there I found a letter that had been tucked away since Christmas of this past year. It was written December the 22nd, and I put it in my briefcase to take with me during the holidays of following Christmas, because it was so important for me to reach this person by telephone. And it's from Bloomfield Hills. She said, Dear Reverend Boland, which means she's never been here. And she said she's a television viewer. I learned of your ministry through Robert Handley's book, Beyond Fear, and through the members of Agoraphobics in Motion. One of our support groups here is AIM, Agoraphobics in Motion. It's well named because fear is so paralyzing. Agoraphobia is fear, and the word means fear of the marketplace, and fear keeps us paralyzed. So Agoraphobics in Motion means that there's a group of people who are overcoming their fear. As you might know, Mr. Handley's book and AIM offer support and solutions to individuals suffering from panic and anxiety attacks. I had my first anxiety attack during May of this year. At the time, I had everything to look forward to. I just graduated from a fine college, was recruited on campus by a reputable company, and was looking forward to my independence as an adult. But most of all, I had faith in God and was grateful for the many blessings that had been bestowed upon me. This is a beautifully written letter, I'm sure you'll agree. Unfortunately, the anxiety continued. I contacted a psychiatrist in my area who prescribed Valium and assured me that I would be feeling fine within 2 weeks. 7 months later, though, my condition remains the same. I had to decline the company's offer and have spent all my savings on therapists. I also lost my boyfriend of 4 years, along with the patience and respect of my family. I'm writing to you, though, because I've lost my most cherished gift, my faith in God. Now, when I pray, I feel empty and disconnected. I long for the faith I once had. I know that you're familiar with the 12-step program, and I smile when I hear echoes of it in your television lessons. I have to admit, though, that I don't quite understand the spiritual awareness the program offers. In other words, step 3, turning my life and my will over to God as I understand Him, bewilders me. What does it actually mean to casually sit back and trust the will of God? And she said that she knows that I'm busy, but would I please get in touch? Mark Twain said, courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear, not absence of fear. People are riddled with fear. But we don't always know what we're afraid of. So we walk around with our guards up, carrying a free-floating fear that jumps from shadows to imagined things, to remembered things, and to people at large. Recovery is to tame that fear. But to tame fear, you must name it. You must give it a face. And this is where our denial has come in and has kept us from admitting or acknowledging that we are frightened, fearful. So we have not given a name. We have not identified our fear. You see, we have to have a face so that we can confront fear, rather than cowering before its might. Remember the story that I told you about David and Goliath? Well, we are David. And fear is Goliath. Fear is the Goliath of our childhood who stomped down hard on all that we were, who flattened or distorted our emotions. It was the fear that convinced us that we could not make it. And then fear came to us through many voices and through so many words that we heard and so many of the experiences that we had, until we finally came to know only shame and guilt and low self-esteem and dread. And will you agree tonight that the time has come to conquer the fear that has conquered us? We have no choice. If we don't conquer fear, we can be sure that fear will always be in charge. And we can ignore it and pretend that it isn't so. But it is so. You can see what fear has done in this person's life. And you might say, well, I have never had experiences like that. And if you say so, it's only because you're in denial. And as a great speaker said from this platform, every one of us is either in denial or recovery. and make your choice. Denial or recovery. Now, fear can only be overcome at the spiritual level of mind. We can't overcome fear without God. We're not going to overcome fear at the psychological level. Guaranteed. Promise. Won't happen. We may move it around a bit, but we're not going to overcome it. And we're not going to overcome fear through chemicals. And don't go to your doctor and said that I told you to stop filling your prescription. You work that out between you and he or she. But it's going to be through prayer and meditation, not medication, when we get to the answer to fear. Why can't we overcome fear without God? Let me tell you why. Because fear is God. Fear is a false God. You shall have no other gods before me, God said. Fear tells us what to believe and who to believe in. A fearful person believes in fear. No matter what God he or she professes, fear always wins. And fear always wins our attention. Have you noticed? Fear always wins our loyalty and our devotion. We turn our will and our lives over to the care of fear. Day after day and event after event, we ask fear, how should we respond? How should we act? And fear always separates us from God. It says, I am the God that you seek. Devotion, loyalty and devotion, you say, what do you mean that I am loyal to fear? Well, if I turn my most precious asset over to fear, my mind and my life, then surely I must be devoted to fear. Devotion meaning what we believe in and give our attention and energy to. The force of the power that we permit to direct our lives. And if I let fear direct my life, then is it not my God? Fear you might define as the absence of God in the arena of our life, in the marketplace. The absence of God where the action is. Where the action is. Because fear does not want you to go into action. Fear wants you to become comatose ultimately and to withdraw from life. Fear is not your friend. But if you will listen carefully, you will turn fear into one of your greatest assets. And fear won't like it when you do so. And now back to the question that Barbara asked. What does it mean, really, to turn my will and my life over to the care of God? Well, first let me read the Freedom from Fear 12 steps that we'll be using in our Freedom from Fear group, based on the original 12 steps of the greatest of all recovery programs. Step 1, we admitted that we were powerless over fear, that our lives had become unmanageable because of it. Is there any one of you here who has the power to control your fear of yourself? If so, raise your hand. I don't see any hands. To admit complete defeat is the beginning. It's the first giant step in the direction of our greatest victory. Step number 2, to come to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity, and preferably to think of it as its sanity, since we really have not had very much sanity in our own lives. What do you think I mean that you have not had very much sanity? Living at our purely human level, we have not. There's a power that would restore us to an order of things that we can only begin to conceive of at this moment. Sanity means ordered thoughts and feelings, ordered lives. So to come to believe that a power greater than ourselves can lift us above our fears and connect us with places inside ourselves in which fear does not exist. Come to believe it. It's difficult to believe it by yourself, and therefore it's so important, remember, to be involved with other persons who are believing and experiencing, to keep our own belief held high. And step number 3, which is the one that Barbara asked about, and she said, what does it mean to turn my will and my life over to the care of God? That's not what step number 3 says, and this step is often misunderstood and misread. If you had to turn your will and your life over to the care of God at this moment, it would be a very difficult thing to do, wouldn't it? How would you do it? But that's not the command, it's not the suggestion, it's not the step. The action part of the step says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Remember the ancient scripture that says, you shall decide upon a thing and it will be established for you? Make a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God. How many times, on how many days have I had to make that decision to turn my will and my life in a given situation over to the care of God? And I make the decision to do it, and I do it, and then 10 seconds later, or surely no more than 10 minutes later, I have to make that decision again. I make that decision as many times as I have to make that decision. Not long ago, I told a story about a hot horseshoe. Suppose that someone handed you a red hot horseshoe and said, here, take a look at this. And you reached for it. How long would it take you to examine that red hot horseshoe? Wouldn't take you very long, would it? Pow, you would drop it. Suppose that every time fear came into your mind, you thought of it as a red hot horseshoe, and you dropped it. And at that moment, you made the decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of the real God, not the God of fear. You made the decision, and then you make the decision again. As many times as fear comes back, you make that decision. And over to the care of God, and to Barbara, who wrote the letter, I would say, my own system has not worked. I turned my will and my life over to the care of me, and it didn't work. And I turned it over to fear, and that didn't work. And I turned it over to some exotic chemicals that it didn't work either. But every time I turn it over to God, it works. So I'm going to keep on making that decision, because every time I do it, it works. Try it, and you will find that it works. But it is a matter of a decision that you make. Ron Scott, last lesson, brought an important fact to our attention. He said it's important to separate fear from the thing that we seem to be afraid of. Remember when he told you that the first time I pointed his fear of heights to him and said to him, it's not heights that you're afraid of. It's fear. Make the separation, the definition in your mind between that which fear wants you to be aware of. Heights, or the fear of crowds. See, the fear of heights, the fear of crowds, the fear of tight places. claustrophobia. The fear of bridges. You know that there are many people who are afraid of bridges? Did you know that? They don't like to cross bridges. And when they're crossing these little bridges on I-6, 96, or 75, or 94, they pretend they're not bridges because they don't look like bridges. And so that's okay. They pretend. But let them go over the Ambassador Bridge. They'd rather go through the tunnel than over the bridge, unless you have claustrophobia. And then you'd rather go over the bridge than go under the tunnel. But if you got both, then you might want to fly over there, except if you have one of those, you probably have the fear of flying also. And fear wants you to be afraid of, so that if you ever do anything about the of, then all it will do will be to move it around to something else. You see, fear does not want you to look inside yourself and see that all it is a state of mind. You're not afraid of heights. You're not afraid of bridges. You're not afraid of tunnels. And you're not afraid of worms. You've only invented those responses. And you don't always have to invent them. They will come to you. If you don't invent them, that's okay. Just be patient. Fear will bring some things to you. But do you see what I mean by letting go of the idea that you're afraid of a thing? Fear wants to take your attention away from it. It's essential that you understand that you're not confronting heights or crowds or tight places or bridges. Anything else that someone else is afraid of that I've forgotten to mention? Spiders? What about anything else? Water? You mean to drink it? No. To be in it up to your neck. It's not those things that we are afraid of. They're only our opportunities to change our thinking. All of these things are outside ourselves, and fear is inside ourselves. You're confronting fear, which is this inner thing, the state of mind, a reaction that has nothing to do with the outer thing. And so you must separate the two things as you're working on yourself. Fear wants you to focus your attention away from it. Fear's survival depends on you not being able to distinguish between an outer event and an inner reaction or an inner state of mind. Fear is a state of mind, nothing more and nothing less. That's all that it is. And you will either change your mind and take charge of your mind, or fear will do it for you. And it has. Oh, something else I'd like for you to remember about fear. You can't have fun and be afraid at the same time. That's Skinny Chine. Fear hates fun. It does. It just, let me tell you, it abhors fun. Does not want you to have fun. Notice that every time that fear comes upon you, you get serious. Oh, God, do you get serious? Oh, serious. Drama, sirens, curtains. You talking about actors and actresses. We become actors and actresses when fear takes charge of our lives. So make the commitment that you're going to replace your inner reaction of fear with fun. Now, that's not going to be easy to do. It's not quite that simple, so I'm going to give you some other. But make that commitment right now. You want to be afraid or you want to have fun? And rather have fun. Do you believe it's possible to have fun in everything that you do in your life? Do you believe it's possible to have fun overcoming your fear of spiders? You believe that? Or bridges? Or people? Or worms? Or whatever it is, do you believe that you can have fun in the process? You can. And you can discover the most amazing, the most remarkable things that fear has prevented you from experiencing about your own life. Take the feeling that you call fear and rename it. Call it excitement. You know, say to yourself, boy, am I excited. Woo! I am so excited I can hardly stand it. Fear will try to talk you out of it. Fear will say, no, you're not. You're scared to death. Call it enthusiasm. Call that feeling joy. Change it. And believe it. Norman Cousins, who wrote one of the greatest books, and he's written several since, his first book was called An Anatomy of an Illness that he wrote as a result of a life-threatening experience that he had. And he has done investigative work now for many years, both on himself with other life-threatening diseases. and in the lives of other people, he made some remarkable discoveries. Cousin believes that negative forces like fear weaken the body, and that positive forces such as joy and love and faith and laughter and hope can have the opposite effect. He said the first thing you've got to do is to take care of that internal upheaval. And so when he had his heart attack, he said, okay, cuz, hold on now. Help is on its way. You'll be all right. We'll deal with this thing very calmly. And I became absolutely confident that I was going to make it. I knew that confidence was essential. The price of fear was so great that I scared myself out of having any fear. Did you hear that? He knew that fear would kill him. And so he was so afraid of being afraid that he said, I'm going to enjoy it. And he did. And he worked on having fun in his recovery. And it always works that way. He said, I was struck by my conclusions about fear. I can't think of anything more crippling than fear. When people act out of fear, they tend not to see how a problem can be turned around right in that vital fraction of a second. Fear has killed more people on the highway. There's only one other thing that has killed as many people, and that's anger. Fear and anger are concomitant. They go together, of course. He said fear produces something like an astigmatism of the intellect. You can't think, and you can't feel anything but fear. You and I have made the commitment that we're going to attack our fear. If that is true, indicate that it is by nodding your head. And if you have made that commitment, I promise you it's the beginning of the most exciting and rewarding period of your life. It will pay off more abundantly than any effort that you have ever made since your birth. I guarantee you that. Incidentally, one more statement that I need to make. You show me an addict, an alcoholic or an addict, and I will show you a person filled with fear. Always. There are so many books that are available, and we need all the help that we can get from the written word. One of the best books, first best books about fear was Beyond Fear by Robert Handley with Pauline Neff as his associate writer. I happen to know Bob Handley very, very well. As a matter of fact, he's spoken from this very platform. He lives the most exciting life that you can imagine as the result of overcoming his paralyzing fears. Another book by Bob Handley is Anxiety and Panic Attacks, Their Cause and Their Cure. A book that I highly recommend is is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers, Ph.D. And these books are available in booksellers, stores all over the country, but they are available here in the bookstore at the Church of Today. Susan Jeffers has put together also an audio cassette of a fear-busting workshop. It is a great series of lessons, and I highly recommend those lessons to you. Great books. Many other books are available also in our bookstore, and I wanted to tell our cassette listeners that you can call the telephone number listed on the cassette that you have or on the package in which this cassette came and order these and other materials that are available to you from this place. I believe that the most powerful, the most useful tool that is available to any person who wishes to overcome fear is a book that we put together here. It's called the Mastermind Goal Achievers Journal. And in the Mastermind Goal Achievers Journal is outlined what we call the transforming system. The transforming system includes an understanding and use of the mastermind principle, goal setting and goal achieving, affirmations, the technique of affirmations and the practice of affirmations, the image book, and personal inventory. And I'm going to very quickly go through these different tools that are available to you in this book, but I urge you to get your copy of the Mastermind Goal Achievers Journal and to begin to use it diligently, because if you're going to overcome fear in its general manifestation in your life or in specific forms that are confronting you at this moment, you will need to have the help of books, of cassette tapes, of other persons who are like-minded and who are also committed, and a workbook. And this is a powerful workbook that is filled with instructions and with tools. In the 5th chapter of the book of Matthew, Jesus said, "Your life is like a lamp that was destined to be placed on a high stand so that the world around you can see it shining." It is. Fear does not want your light to shine. It wants you to live in darkness. It would say not total darkness, but it wants you to have dark areas in your life from which you can expect little help and no recovery, and live out your time filled with quiet desperation. But that's not your destiny. Destiny requires that you do more and be more and experience more. In your Mastermind Goal Achievers Journal, the first tool is the Mastermind Principle. In the 18th chapter of the book of Matthew, Jesus said, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name and my nature, there am I also." Nothing great has ever been achieved or maintained without an understanding of and the practice of the Mastermind Principle, which is based on some component facts. Number one is that there is a master mind or spirit or power that controls the universe. You can call the mastermind, which is merely a generic term that makes that spirit acceptable in the spoken form to large numbers of people. It takes it out of a religious context. You can speak of it in a religious context if you choose. You can call it Christ, the spirit of the universe. Call it what you want to. It doesn't make any difference. But it is the master mind that is in all and over all and through all. It's the creator of the universe. It's the wisdom, the intelligence, and the power that made everything exist and that sustains everything that is. And the Mastermind Principle is a scientific method of focusing the power of thought for the specific purpose of establishing a direct connection with the mastermind. It is breaking through the self-destructive, traumatic concepts in which we live individually and from which we cannot escape unless we have formed a group of other like-minded persons with whom we can share openly and honestly, and people in whom and for whom we can believe, and people who can believe in us. The Mastermind Principle has as one of its premises the fact that 2 or 3 people can believe something much more powerfully and deeply and completely for each of them and for all of them than one person can believe for himself or herself. And you know that this is true. It's true. Jesus never performed his first miracle until he called his 12 disciples to him. Think of that. And you and I are not going to perform very many miracles by ourselves either. The most impressive, to me, living things on this planet are the sequoias, the redwood trees of our west coast, and they happen to be among the oldest living things on the planet. Now, most anyone who knows things about trees will tell you that usually you can judge the depth of the root system of a tree by the height of the tree. There's a certain rule of thumb that is used. Do you think that's true of sequoias that reach 300 feet tall and above? Boy, the roots must go deep. Right? Wrong. They have a different system. And if you and I wish to be a giant, we also must incorporate that same system. Your roots and mine individually have to go very deep. But they have found that to become giants, that system no longer works. And so they have developed, the sequoia trees, a system in which their roots are intertwined. And so that each tree then supports the other trees. You will never see a giant sequoia tree living by itself. You can plant one, a small one, and it will grow until it reaches a certain height and the strong winds come and it will blow over. But in a forest of sequoias, they can grow tall and straight and live a long time and demonstrate the fullness of their glory. Their light can shine for all the world to see. And so I would suggest to you that if you wish to lose the loser in you, that you form your own support group. And a generic support group like AIM, Agoraphobics in Motion that we have here, or like our Beyond Fear support group that we have, the Freedom from Fear support group. Have you noticed that when you abandon an old way of behaving, even when it has been harmful or self-defeating to you, that there's a deep sense of loss, a mourning period, that you unconsciously reach for and that you yearn for your loser skills in spite of yourself? Have you discovered that? It was so much fun being a loser that I don't think I want to quit. I had so much fun being afraid, I think I'll try some more of it. And it just comes into our mind easily. Well, form your mastermind group. Create your own specific support group as well as belonging to the generic support group so that you can break out of your patterns, so that your support members can help you to see those patterns and help you to escape from them. They can believe for you beyond your old ideas that try to keep coming back to you. The second tool is that of goal setting and goal achieving. And in your mastermind journal, there are instructions on how to set and to achieve goals. Very important. You see, the human mind is a goal setting and goal achieving mechanism. Everyone sets goals every day of their life. But most of our goals are set by our fears. We're always saying, I can't. Fear is always telling you what you cannot do. And that becomes a goal that says, I cannot do it. Of course I cannot do it. I can't do it. I can't drive at night, of course. My mother told me that. Fear says you can't. And until you and I set new goals, we will keep acting from our old goals. Fear sets negative goals. And if you don't set goals, then your life as it now is becomes your goal. And you will continue to reproduce it and to experience the fear of it as long as you live. Napoleon Hill said, whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve. And so I must believe beyond my belief. I must reach beyond the beliefs that fear has ingrained in me. I must have help. I must practice these principles in my mind so that my affairs, so that everything in my life can change. The third tool is affirmation. Have you ever heard a person who is filled with fear speak? If you haven't, eat in any public restaurant and listen to the conversation at the next booth or the next table. And you will see that it is fear-filled. It is incredible. Visit your family of origin over the holidays. And listen carefully and be astonished, be absolutely amazed, because everything that is spoken comes out of fear. Am I putting your family down? I don't even know them. But I promise you that that's what you will experience when you go home. And you learned well at their knees. And we speak the language of fear. We speak the words of fear, the conversation of fear. You will decide upon a matter and it will be established for you. You see, everything that you need is trying to happen to you. We don't have to make the good life happen. All that we have to do is to accept it, and we have to change our language. We have to change our words. We have to change our concepts. We have to speak new phrases, and we have to learn those new phrases because we don't know them. Years and years ago, when I began to recover, I bought an old reel-to-reel. It was not a tape deck like they have today. They didn't have them in those days. I bought one of the first ones and converted it so it would sit in the front seat of my car. And I made statements, affirmations that I played over and over and over to my mind because I wanted to get out of my mind my old ideas. The result is nil until we let go of our old ideas. And so I have to conceive of new things and implant those new concepts into my mind and believe them and feel them and taste them and hear them until I can speak from them. I must become these ideas. And I cannot let fear speak to me. Fear spoke to me all of my life. Affirmations, such as today in my Mastermind Goal Achievers Journal, this morning, in my meditative time. The affirmation for today, contained in every problem is the seed of a greater good. I surrender the problem and I accept the good. Powerful affirmation, isn't it? Other days of this week, God is in charge of my life, making all things new. You know that God is never in charge of my life until I make that decision, until I turn my will and my life over to the care of God. God was in charge of my life yesterday, 10 minutes ago, perhaps. But God is in charge of my life, making all things new. Not just in charge, but making all things new. That's a choice that I make. And it becomes real when I make the choice. It doesn't even exist until I make the choice. But making the choice is not enough. I must speak the choice. I must speak it. I must hear myself speak it with power and with belief. That's what an affirmation is. You saying something that you have come to believe or that you're coming to believe, and you say it until you believe it. And then it becomes your new reality. Divine energy gives me the strength and the power to do what I need to do today. How many times have you heard someone say, boy, if I had the strength, I'd go do it? Well, you'll never have the strength. Go do it, and you'll have the strength. Whose strength? Mine? Yours? Divine energy gives me the strength and the power to do what I need to do, so I will fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm as I spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that need to be done by me, feeling no fear. That's an affirmation, man, that will change the world. It won't change anybody else's world, but it'll sure change your world, and if you don't believe it, you try it. And while you're trying it, you'll get that telephone call that says, I don't know about you. I'm going to call Mama and see what she has to say about all this. Sounds like you belong to a cult. I mean, you'll hear all kinds of things. And affirmations about yourself. See yourself in a new way. Self-confidence is evidence in my walk, my posture, my voice, and all that I do. God speaks to, touches, and heals me. I'm a beautiful, pleasant, confident person. I feel free from sharp words and negative emotions. And for people who've just been so afraid. I love mornings. Fearful people don't like mornings. They don't like afternoons either. So I love mornings. I love afternoons. I love evenings. I love being alive. I love being alive. I love it. I love it. I love it. And by golly, I start loving it. In an adversity, I look for the seed of an equivalent benefit, and I persistently strive toward my goal, thankful for the lessons I am learning. Affirmation after affirmation. And the fourth tool is a powerful tool called the image book. It's creating new pictures in your mind. And in your Mastermind Goal Achievers Journal, there are some sample image books that you can actually use until you create your own. My mind is the instrument of my success. I am the best that I can be. All of my relationships are happy and harmonious. Loving everyone is my inner song. And there are pictures that the mind begins to pick up on, and you can create your own image book. One of the greatest things I ever did in my life was to create my first image book. I felt powerful in doing it, but I felt so silly when someone saw it. Create your own image book. And if you don't create one that will embarrass you, it's no good. Because your low self-esteem must be embarrassed. You have to embarrass yourself out of your old pictures of yourself. Marcus Aurelius said, a man's life is dyed the color of his imagination. Fear has colored our imagination. You know it's true. With all kinds of dark imaginings, none of which ever happened until we kept on being afraid, and then they began to happen. Well, create your own new pictures of yourself and of your life through an understanding of how to create an image page and then an image book. And the fifth tool is your personal inventory. Shakespeare said, of all knowledge, the wise and good seek most is to know themselves. It's true. Know ourselves. But your fear does not want you to look at yourself. It wants you to look away from yourself. And an inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing journey into your own mind. And that journey represents the beginning of a new way of life. And if you're not willing to take that journey, you'll not get very far in life. You won't. For those of you who have never taken a personal inventory, I recommend Personal Inventory Cassette Lessons by Lenore Scott. The tool that unlocks the past and opens the door to the future. And they're available in our bookstore, and you can order them by telephone or by mail. And also, there's a series of cassette lessons on the whole transforming system, which takes you much deeper than the limited concepts that I'm sharing with you at this time. The Transforming System by Jack Boland. Personal inventory demands your total honesty with yourself. you may find this the most challenging part of the transforming system, but it'll also become the most freeing part of the transforming system. Are you ready to make a dramatic change? Are you? I'm going to share with you a simple idea that will solve almost any problem that you may have and bring some wonderful changes. I said simple, but it won't necessarily be easy. It's so simple that anyone can do it. In fact, learning to do what I'm about to share with you is the primary spiritual responsibility that all of us have in this lifetime. And the plan is this. Try living the next 24 hours as though God is right beside you, inside you every moment. Seeing everything that you do and hearing everything that you say. Now, this sounds like a simple formula, but you will discover that it'll be the most difficult thing that you've ever done in your life to live 24 hours that way. In fact, I can tell you right now that you're not going to succeed. But if you try, you've already succeeded. So you can't fail if you try. But an example of what I'm talking about. If you feel like complaining, do you think that you really would if God could hear you? If you're inclined to argue or to be demanding, most likely you wouldn't be if you knew that God was there, because God is. And would you choose to spend your day in a fearful, worrisome state of mind or feeling sorry for yourself while the presence of God is there? How would you do your work with God watching your every movement? It would be impossible to be rude or curt or unthoughtful of others and their needs or responsibilities. And how could you ignore strangers? If you knew that God was there in you and all around you and in every stranger that you meet. Can you imagine yourself being intolerant of anyone else, of another race or group, domineering or possessive with God watching you? Would you not want to give the very best that you have to give? Can you see why I said this plan is simple but not easy? It really does require that you make some conscious effort and choices. But I promise you that if you will try it, it'll be the most wonderful experience. And every moment that you're practicing the presence of God, you will not be afraid. You can't be afraid. Isn't that a comforting thought? You can't be afraid. Why will it work? Very simply, because God is with you every moment and every step of your life. And so admit your fear to God and to yourself and to another human being. Ask for help, and you will find it. Become entirely ready to recover, be healed, and go into action to do the thing that you fear. Surround yourself with other people who are recovering and begin to surrender all medication, but rely on prayer and meditation. You'll discover that if you do, that there will be superpowers that will be unleashed in you. And fear won't like it, but it will have become your greatest ally, because you will have said, every time I feel fear, it's a red-hot horseshoe, I will drop it and reach for God. Do the thing I fear. God bless you on the most incredible journey that your life will ever experience. That's the way it really is.